Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on improving your enterprise products increments. My name is Liviu Oros, and I'm going to be your host today. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A option, and I'm going to answer any questions at the end of the session. Today's session, I want to talk to you about what I've learned from coming from advertising background to the enterprise space. I started 10 years ago as a designer, working in creating digital products for brands like coffee brands, pharmaceuticals, insurance, laundry detergents, software fabricators, and so on. And 6 years ago, I moved into the enterprise space, and I started working on banking, insurance, healthcare, pharmaceuticals as well. And I have to say that things are different, and they're so different spaces. And one thing that I really learned is that if you want to enact change, and I mean radical change in enterprise, is pretty hard. And you always have to think as playing the long game, because these things turn slowly for a reason. If it would turn fast, this would happen. And as I said, things in enterprise move slowly for many, many reasons. First of all, is that we work on a very specific and very complex applications, and the structure of management in an enterprise level organization is very complex, it's very layered. Here is a high level overview of an enterprise management structure. There are a lot of things going on here. There is a lot of complexity in enterprise. But even so, with all that complexity, there are a lot of opportunities to improve things, to change. But we have to remember, one, that we cannot fix everything. The reality is that enterprise the way it is, and you have to remember that working in enterprise means playing the long game. Now, today, what I want to discuss is why enterprise is actually awesome. UX enterprise is actually awesome. Why our users cannot handle rapid change, what we can do about it, why our organization cannot handle rapid change, and what we can do about it. This talk is for developers, for product owners, for devs, for whoever you're in. If you're in a team and you would like to involve change, this can apply to anyone. And just because enterprise moves slowly, that doesn't mean that it cannot be done. It just means that you have to move in ways that are a bit more, let's say, effective or sneaky. But we'll get to that. Now, first things first. Why enterprise UX is actually awesome. And I want to give you a couple of numbers to start with. Last year, 5.6 billion people were online. That means they were using software, they were using products, or they were developing product. They got a connection with a product or software. If we go more granularly and just look at one country, last year, over 18 million people were working in tech. That's a lot of people developing software and using software. And yes, there is the consumer space. You know, we have all those cool things going on, everything from Airbnb, Instagram, and so on and so forth. And if you're lucky, you might get a chance to work on something really cool. But how much can you actually improve how you book a thing or how you post something on the internet? When you go to enterprise software and enterprise users, yes, we still have old versions of Windows, we still have old versions of Outlook. And people use them all the time. I mean, these people are everyday people. There are our relatives. There are people that we know. And yes, they might not have, very glamorous lives, but they use products, and the products that we develop, for more than 40 hours a week. That's a lot. Imagine how big of an impact you can have on their lives if you improve the way they work, if you improve their flow. I mean, we have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of power, and we have to acknowledge that as, you know, software developers, designers, and product owners, and so on. We can actually improve and have a big impact in their actual lives. But let's see first, why our users cannot handle rapid change. And I would like to give you an example, one of my favorite examples from my advertising years, Coca-Cola. I don't know how many of you remember when a couple of years ago, Coca-Cola was struggling. I mean, they were doing well, they were doing okay, but they had a couple of frictions with Pepsi, and they said, okay, we're on solid grounds, let's shake things up a bit, let's do something different. And they said, okay, let's try this, let's do New Coke. And they did it right. I mean, they tested everything. They did over 200,000 different taste tests. And, everybody loved the new formula, the new Coke. Everybody said, yeah, it's awesome, we like it. Oh, it's so good. But here's the thing. When they launched the product, nobody could actually drink an entire can. I mean, yeah, they liked the taste, first, second sip, but they couldn't, they couldn't drink an entire can. And this is the same thing with our users as well. If you test it in a well-developed and controlled environment, it doesn't mean that it will scale. When you make changes to your software, think of the impact it will have on your users. I mean, they don't just wait for you to make a change. They have their own problems, their own lives, their own things that go on in their own head. And every change you make, it will have a big impact on your users. Just because you tested doesn't mean that it's right for them. 5 years ago, I was working on a big product that was used by multiple big brands. And actually, what this product did was generate reports. They were very technical reports. They were reports used by very technical engineers. And they didn't want to always have to generate all these reports by themselves. And said, dude, we have to streamline this thing. And I would like, even my personal assistant or anybody else to just do this report. And I said, yeah, awesome, fine. It was very complex structure. We put it in a step-by-step wizard. We made sure that we removed any friction, any technical jargon, and so on, to make sure that anybody can actually use it. When the product ended up in the hands of these engineers, personal assistants, or the engineer secretary, so on, whoever needed to generate a report instead of them, they didn't actually know how to use it, because everything that we considered friction, all those jargons and all those technical labels, everything, they learned it in all their years of experience so far. And here's the thing: they missed that. They weren't comfortable. They weren't sure on what they're doing. And yeah, this was one of those things that we figured that we don't actually know what's best for our users. We have hypotheses and we do research. And the research generally tends to say that we're right if you do it properly, but it's not always a guarantee. That's why their job depends on the software they use. You have to have empathy for them. Think of muscle memory. The hardest thing to do is to unlearn something. I mean, if, for example, Sketch would change something in their workflow now when I'm doing design, I would be frustrated, because everything is muscle memory at this point. And I can do it, instinctively, not even actually thinking about it. Knowing all this about our users, what can we do about it? There are a lot of things that you can do about it, but what I want to give you now is just a basic list, a step-by-step list that, in any context, this will work. You'll have to apply it to your product, but this can work. So first thing, just consider a straight redesign. It's better this way for you and your team to think of all the problems and all the connections and all the things that you could do. Just start with a straight redesign. After you make this decision, define your user base. Are you focusing on new users, or are you focusing on existing users? Because if you're focusing on new users, you might want to think about adding new features. If you're focusing on existing users, then you might want to focus on their current pain points. Once you know who you're focusing on, start with the biggest problems first. Remember, you cannot fix everything. So identify the problems and then do a priority list. When you have everything that you know what you're working on, you know who you're working with for, you know the problems, you can start with a pilot problem. I know, yes, it's easier said than done, but here's what you can do. As we said before, again, you have to start with a small user base for which you build things. You know the problems you wanted to fix, so you're building the VMP to fix them. You start onboarding them gently, and you have to monitor all the support calls, either via phone, email, social media, wherever they're coming from. Make sure that you know what's going on. Make sure that you know what problems arise, or their frustrations, or what they actually like. I mean, maybe there's something that it's a small jewel there that you can integrate further along. Once you have this in place, you can use it as a template and just repeat the sessions. Repeat the sessions with key users and see how they adjust and see how they feel about it. After you have all the data from here, you can expand on more features as you onboard more clients or users. But what about our organization? Why can't it handle rapid change? Usually you have a legacy product and it works, it's there, but you can envision how great it can be. And you want to get to that part, but you cannot nuke the previous, you cannot nuke the current product and start from scratch, because it's a critical product for your workflow. It's 35% of your revenue. It's something that you cannot just nuke and start fresh. So slowly add improvements to this painfully aged software, because it's the only way to produce meaningful change. Slowly add improvements, because remember, we're playing the long game. We cannot just rush through things. Your users cannot handle it and your organization cannot handle it. When I was 7 or 8, my step-grandfather had a medical problem, and my father tried to explain it to me, tried to make me understand what's going on there. And one of the things that he said, and he stuck with me all my life, was when you get something wrong, when you have an infection, you have to get straight to the bone, get it out, and make sure that it doesn't linger, it doesn't fester, and it just gets out of hand. And as an individual, for me, I actually used it in my life every day. Every time something happened, okay, can we fix it? Yes, no, it's easier, start from scratch. Burn bridges, start from scratch. And as a person or as a small team, that could work because you became more resilient, you become more adaptive to change. But as a company, you need to offer stability. You need to help offer structure and reliance. So that's why you have to go on. You have to go iterative, and also and maybe that means going compromise after compromise after compromise. But if you want to affect change, in enterprise, you have to move slowly. And it helps if you can, change your attitude towards it. In this case, what can we do regarding our organization? When I moved from advertising to enterprise, this is what was my first interaction with phase-based product development, which basically is the traditional waterfall-based way of doing things, and that's fine. It can work great for some people, and they're very successful doing it, which basically means, ask for some money, design the product, build the product, ship the product, put it in maintenance mode, and then wait up to 2 years until you do the next phase. That's fine. That's okay. But we know that we can do it better from our, startup friends. So instead of going in maintenance mode and having a team of 1 PM and 2 devs, I think we can do it better. And I think that we have a chance to actually do things better if you have an ongoing UI UX designer with you. This does not mean to have him with you 40 hours a week. This means having him just for half a day each week. If we have ongoing UI UX, we are more intelligent with how we prioritize our allocation. We can react quicker when we see that something is wrong. We have less risk. And by doing this every week, we end up asking for less money in the second phase because we have less changes to do. So how would this look in reality? As a designer, you offer yourself your services for as a help. If you're a PM, you can ask a designer to come and join you for half a day each week. If you're a dev or tester, you can propose this. So basically, what happens is, let's say you have the designer for half a day each week. You work with the PM on a priority list. As a designer, you can also work in parallel on your own priority list, because yes, the PM has his own view of the product. He knows what his users need, or at least he needs what he thinks he needs, what he knows what the users need. But in parallel, you can do your own research. You can review support tickets. You can do evaluation of their design. You can do design audit. Whatever you feel you can, it would help. After you have those lists, you start delivering on requests and build trust. Once that trust is built, after months of delivering and making things better, because again, we want to make the product better. We don't want to prove anyone right or wrong. We just want to make the product better. Once everything, once you have that trust and you have that workflow, you can start, pushing on a collaborative priority list. Open the list to everybody in the team. Show your findings. Show the PM's findings. Show the dev's findings. Show everybody's finding and everybody's ideas to see how they can improve. If they say, I know what the user needs, my priority list is okay, just do that. If they say we know what the user wants and needs, just invoke the Trojan horse. Now, when I'm talking about the UX Trojan horse, what am I talking about? I'm talking about conducting usability testing as a means of showing the value of user research to an otherwise hostile stakeholder. Maybe as I said, maybe the stakeholder already says, I know what's good for them, and that's enough. Do that job. You can go and say, hey PM, I've been working on this flow, but I don't know what the best way or the best color or the best wording for this is. And I want to do some testing to get it right. And he'll most certainly say yes. Okay, go do the testing. And in this, you can, create a flow which you can invoke other priorities from that list, from something a developer said, or something that you said, or something that somebody else said. And when they see the user struggling with the feature, they won't ignore testing again. It educates the stakeholders in understanding that all the belief they have about the users that are not researched or validated might be wrong, or maybe they're out of date. Now, this is one of the simplest ways of getting the organization to move along with changes. As I said, UI, enterprise UX is actually awesome because it's offer you the possibility to influence and bring a positive change in someone's actual life. Yes, our users cannot handle rapid change, but we can help them along the way, and we can help them by guiding them and by listening to them and being empathic with them. Your organization cannot handle rapid change, but you can move things forward slowly. Yes, that means compromising from time to time, but change your attitude if you cannot change things. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this was helpful to you, and I hope that you got some really cool and new ideas from it. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the Q&A, and I'll go through them. At this point, I see that there are no questions. But yes, thank you so much for your time. And if you want more details, or you like to go in depth on one of the methods or one of the ideas, please let me know. If you would like to go in more details on something specific to your teams, or how would you go on to do stuff, please feel free to email me, and we can do it that way as well. Yes. Is the Coke story really true? Yes, it is. You can, Google it, YouTube it. It's a lot of research done on it. It was a very impactful thing at the time. If there are any other questions. If there are no other questions, I think we can close it. Oh, there's a new one. Is the collaboration between developer and UX UI important? Yes, I believe that it's very important, especially at the beginning. I think the designer should listen to the developer regarding their workflow and the technology they use, so they won't so their designs won't become an impediment in the development part, and vice versa. The developer should be aware of the designer's flow, be aware of his ideas, be aware of how he wants to structure everything, to make sure that implementation and development will be easy, not hard. So this back and forth between them can save a lot of time and a lot of development costs in the long run. Yes, at the beginning it could be a bit more condensed and more to do, but in the long run, I think that it's very valuable. Can we measure the ROI of dealing with design debt? Yes. Okay, regarding design debt, you have to make some really good research to see where you're at the time before before you start fixing the design debt that you have. You have to look at time spent on screen. You have to look at time spent on fixing bugs. You have to look at time spent on support calls. This is time and money. Those are resources. Once you know where you're at before you start redesigning or before you start focusing on dealing with design debt, then you'll have a baseline. And yes, you can, in the end, you can measure it regarding time and costs, both on the support and development team, and both on the design and onboarding of the users as well. Thank you so much for the questions. Those are really cool and good questions. Please feel free to add some more if you have any. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this was useful and helpful for you, everyone. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you like to talk anything more specific. I think I'm gonna end now. Thank you so much for your time. You'll get the recording of the webinar via your email later on. Thank you and have a lovely day.